Hey guys, it's Sasha. New data this morning showed good GDP data, growing at 2.8% per year. And the ADP new jobs data beat expectations by more than 100%. The stock market is hitting all-time highs and big tech companies like Google are posting record profits. And Google making money means that people are spending money on ads. So if you look at the overall data, it looks like the economy is in great shape. Everything is dandy. So why is it that 2 out of 5 people have maxed out their credit cards? And why is it that 2 brand new surveys are showing that people are scared about their finances? Or what is actually going on with the economy? Well, the new data from this morning showed that GDP in the third quarter grew by 2.8%. If you look at the detailed table, out of the 2.8% in the overall GDP increase, 2.46%, so almost all of it, came from personal consumption expenditures. And this contribution is split 50-50 between goods and services. The thing is though, last quarter, the overall GDP number was pretty much the same, 3%. And in that quarter, the personal consumption bit was only 1.9%. You can see below there is this line for gross private domestic investment, and in the most recent quarter it was flat, basically at 0. But the quarter before, it contributed 1.47% of overall GDP growth. So those two lines seem to fluctuate and cancel each other out, but generally contribute positively to GDP growth. But further down, net exports of goods and services is negative. And you can see that except for one abnormally good quarter in 2022, this line has been mostly negative for the last 4 years. This chart shows the proportion of GDP that comes from exports, and you can see that for the last 6 quarters in a row, it has been at 10.9%. Seems a little bit odd, almost like the intern entering the data fell asleep on the keyboard, but the current contribution to GDP from exports is a lot lower than it was during the boom decade in the 2010s. And this may have something to do with the fact that the US economy is reportedly booming. All the other economies are not doing well at all. You know, the GDP in the US is growing, the GDP everywhere else is not growing, the stock market in the US is exploding, the stock market everywhere else is not exploding. And it's true the European economies are flatlining. The UK economy has not really grown in the last 5 years, no matter how hard the UK government has tried to massage the numbers. China's economy has slowed down massively. So what is going on? Is this the actual reason? How is it that the rest of the world is going through some sort of pain, some kind of a downturn, but the US economy is doing so great? This morning, we've got the ADP jobs data. This is the most popular survey for new jobs in the private sector, and the economists were expecting around 110,000 jobs being added. But the number smashed expectations and came in at plus 233,000 new jobs in October. And the September number got revised upwards from 143 to 159,000 at the same time. But at the same exact time yesterday, we got the new job openings data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And September job openings fell to 7.4 million. That's the number of jobs available. That's the lowest level since January 2021. And props to the Bureau of Labor Statistics for gaslighting. September job openings and hires changed little apparently, where little is 5%, over 5% in just 1 month. Here is the overall chart of this data, and you can see that the trend with job openings since the start of 2022 has been strongly negative. This is very unusual because previously job openings would decline only during major recessions like the dot-com crash and the 2008 financial crash, and when things are good, job openings tend to go up. As the economy is doing well, job openings tend to go up. But you can see that after this huge decline, the current level of job openings is roughly in line with 2019, which was the peak following the steady increase as the economy was doing great in the 2010s. So it is very hard to compare the current numbers to what we've seen before because, well, working patterns changed massively since 2020 and the number of job openings absolutely exploded like no tomorrow in 2021. So the absolute number of job openings right now at the moment, it's not low. In fact, historically, it's quite reasonable. And in the most recent consumer confidence survey, 35.1% of people said that jobs were plentiful, which was a big increase on September data. So that survey seems to confirm it, and only 16.8% said that jobs were hard to get. This number was down from 18.6% in September, despite the fact that the number of job openings fell sharply. The overall consumer confidence index ticked up a lot in September. You can see at the end of this chart, but if you zoom out to look over the last 4 years, consumer confidence is hovering around the 100 mark, goes up and down, a lot lower than the 120, 130-ish level that we saw between 2017 and 2020. So jobs are still relatively easy to get despite the number of job openings going down by 40% in the last 2.5 years. Unemployment has gone up a little bit, but is still at just 4.1%. But here is a recent Primerica survey, and the top question was, how would you rate the condition of your personal finances? The proportion reporting excellent or good was around 50% for the last few years, but in the most recent report, it suddenly dipped to 44%, a pretty big decline. And look just below. Overall, would you say your income is, the number that said falling behind the cost of living, that number is high, 68%, but it's about the same as it was before. That number hasn't really changed. In fact, it's a bit lower than it was in 2022. So jobs are good. The incomes from those jobs seem good. Employment is apparently fine, but people feel like their finances are in the shit. Well, the only remaining part of the equation is spending. Everywhere you look, everybody is wildly celebrating that inflation has come back down. And the truth is that is good. Yes, it has come right back down. Inflation in the US at the moment is only 2.5% as of right now, and it's still on the way down. But low inflation just means that prices are going up less quickly. They are still going up after already going up. They're just not going up as fast as they used to. And when I see all the economists and all the big brains on CNBC talk about this, I don't think they actually understand how inflation affects the average person. I'm not sure they understand the actual way that inflation works. I'll give them credit. I'll pretend that they do. But they genuinely don't seem to get it. Inflation being down doesn't magically make it easier for the average person. The moment inflation goes down to 2.5%, everyone forgets that inflation was sat at almost 10% 2 years ago. And inflation going down now does not undo the inflation that has already happened. Wages in the US have grown. And if you look at the average wage data, well, average wages have actually kept pace with inflation. If you take the big wage increases that happened in 2021, well then average wages have actually outpaced inflation. But here's the thing. If you are a lower wage earner, the way that you spend your money is very different to someone who makes $400,000 working for Google in Silicon Valley. People on low wages spend a disproportionate amount of money on just the core basics: food, energy, and a place to live. Almost all of your paycheck is going to those things and those things alone, and maybe to repaying some debts. And during this inflation spike, the three things that went up way more than average were food, energy, and rent and house prices. So the issue is that those on lower wages, their spend distribution is not the same as how the inflation index is calculated, how average inflation is calculated. The inflation index, for example, says that 36% of money is spent on rent or mortgage payments, on average. Now, show me somebody on a low wage in a city who pays just 36% of their post-tax pay for their house or apartment. The median wage in the US, the median wage is $60,000. So after tax and all the deductions, that's going to be around $47,000, depends on your state. But that comes out at about $4,000 a month. So the average rent for a 2-bedroom place, according to Zumper, is $1,910. So that's about 50% of the average wage. And what happens if you earn less than average? Because 50% of people earn less than average. Well, then you're paying 60 or 70% of your income towards rent. Although wages have kept up with average inflation, average wages have kept pace with average inflation. Wages, especially wages for lower paid workers, have not kept up with the insane inflation on the things that those people spend disproportionate amounts of their money on. Things like food, energy, and housing. And this is a really critical point. And when that first hit in 2022, when the problem first arrived. People began dipping into their savings. People began borrowing a lot of money. The credit card expenditure went through the roof. They thought they just needed to get through. But now, 2 and a bit years later, it hasn't actually got any easier. People are now out of money. The issue that we're seeing is that people on lower wages are running out of steam. A recent study by Bankrate has found that 1/3 of people are currently behind on their bills. 1/3. And you can guess which wage band that 1/3 is coming from. The same study showed that 37% of Americans have either maxed out their credit cards or almost maxed out their credit cards. And out of those who have maxed out their credit cards, more than half said it was because of inflation or higher prices. Only 25% said it was because of losing their job or losing their income. The overall GDP numbers are being pumped at the moment by the same thing that's pumping the stock market overall: big tech and AI. Last night, Google reported their results. Their ad revenue is up 12%. You might have noticed why if, well, you're watching this video, you might have seen an ad or 2 or 5 before watching it. And if you try Googling anything recently, you probably are used to seeing 4 different ads before seeing a single search result. The reason these companies are making more money is not necessarily because things are going great. It may well be because, well, other reasons, and Google Cloud is up 35%. That business is booming right now because everyone and their dog wants to train AI models and build various AI wrappers and whatever. Here is the list of the biggest companies in the S&P 500, just so that we can see. And you can see that they make up a reasonably large proportion. These biggest companies are like 7% of the total. And you know what those biggest companies are busy doing right now? Well, Apple just released Apple Intelligence this week. They've been building this AI because, well, everybody apparently wants AI like all the time on their phone. Nvidia has become the second most valuable company in the world because they sell the graphics cards to train and run AI. Microsoft is pushing Copilot, which is AI. They've just installed some AI features on Windows. They own a big slice of OpenAI. Amazon is balls deep into AI, especially with Amazon Web Services. Meta is doing something a bit different to everybody else by publicly releasing their Llama models, and those are AI, by the way. The whole stock market and the economy at the moment is being propped up and riding this AI wave. The companies doing it are posting massive numbers because there's a huge amount of expenditure, there's a whole load of money flowing into this thing. But the question is this AI wave masking what's actually happening in the real world? To real world people on lower wages who don't work in Silicon Valley in AI. Like the fact that manufacturing in the United States is in decline and has been in decline for the last 3 years. How house construction in the US is in decline and has been in decline for a while. Like how major car manufacturers are struggling because people don't have the money to buy new cars. You won't hear about this sort of thing on the news because it's way too much nuance, because everyone just looks top down. You won't hear about the fact that people are defaulting on their credit card payments at the fastest rate since the financial crash, and it's going up really fast. This sort of data is buried underneath the shroud of shiny AI that makes everything look dandy, and the economy overall looks just fine. Remember, if you want to learn all about investing analysis, how the stock market works, how to look at the data, go and check out my course called the Investor Playbook in the description. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you later.